Salt Lake City welcomes distinguished guests and leaders to the 68th United Nations Civil Society Conference happening right here at the Salt Palace Convention Center. This is the first time this conference has been held in the United States outside of the New York City headquarters. On this week's episode of Capital City News, we hear from Vicki Bennett, the city's sustainability director, and how Salt Lake City is working to address the goals of the conference, but also how to create a sustainable future. And our History Minute, just in time for Rivalry Week, is about Coach Ron McBride at the University of Utah. Let's get started with our legislative update and look back.
At its August 20th meeting, the City Council, acting as the RDA Board, approved the RDA's Capital Improvement Program projects funding. And as the City Council, they held their Truth in Taxation public hearing, formally completing the annual budget process. They also welcomed those visiting Salt Lake as part of the 68th United Nations Civil Society Conference. To learn more, visit slc.gov/council.
School is back in session, which means young pedestrians are out walking to and from school. The Salt Lake City Streets Division took extra precaution this summer by repainting 1,700 crosswalks with reflective white paint, including 200 within school zones. Drivers are reminded to slow down in school zones and at crosswalks, stop for school buses, pay attention to flashing lights and signals, and to always be on the lookout for pedestrians. Crossing guards like Judy Burr play a vital role in keeping children safe while also reminding drivers that roads are a shared space.
Drivers need to slow down and be aware that there are children present and that the lights are usually flashing, and if the lights are not flashing, they need to be mindful of the cones and also our signs.
Salt Lake City is currently hiring crossing guards. David Tola, Program Director for Salt Lake City Compliance, shares details.
It's not a volunteer job. I know many people think it's a volunteer job. We do pay $13 an hour. It's 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon. You also do get a UTA transit pass that you can use at any time, both to and from work, but also in your personal life. If you'd like to apply for the job, visit SLCgov.com, click on Jobs or Careers, and look for the job. It's called School Part-Time Crossing Guard.
This year's 68th United Nations Civil Society Conference focuses on making cities more safe, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. Vicki Bennett, the city's sustainability director, breaks down this year's UN Goal 11 and some of our targets and what the city is doing to address those. First, we start with how Salt Lake City is working to address affordable housing.
Over the last decade, inequality has rippled through our city. Stable quality housing has grown more expensive and out of reach for far too many. To meet that challenge, Salt Lake City has fundamentally shifted how we think and act on housing. Our housing plan, Growing Salt Lake City, keeps equity and fairness at the forefront of all decisions. Housing stability is a key component of addressing our region's homelessness crisis, which is why we're opening 2 new homeless resource centers this year, transforming the way our community cares for the most vulnerable people in our community.
And now we move to how the city is working to create accessible transportation.
More than half of the pollution we breathe is caused by vehicles, and Salt Lake City knows that reliable public transportation is critical to getting people out of their cars and clearing the air. Historically, the capital city focused on north and south connectivity, which has created an equitable system that doesn't serve all residents. But with our new transit master plan, that's changing. Transit service is expanding to include higher frequency and later hours. We're also creating new public-private partnerships to explore new ways to move people around the city in a more sustainable way. Transportation is at the heart of a sustainable, thriving city with equitable access to jobs, homes, recreation, and shopping.
now we talk about how the city is preserving cultural heritage.
In Salt Lake City, we are interested in preservation not only to keep the past alive, but to inspire a more creative and sustainable future. With continued investments in the historic places of our city, we're trying to show residents and visitors that preservation matters. In the 2020 budget, over $1 million was set aside to restore the Fisher Mansion Carriage House to become a public nature center along the Jordan River Trail. Visitors will be able to rent kayaks, enjoy festivals, and take part in educational programs, all on a historic property that dates back to 1893. In Salt Lake City, we are funding preservation, making it more accessible and visible to all residents.
Our next target goal focuses on clean energy.
Salt Lake City is constantly working to conserve resources, reduce pollution, slow climate change, and ensure a healthy, sustainable future. In 2016, we became the 16th city in the United States to establish a 100% clean energy goal. We're working diligently to fulfill this pledge, from passing ordinances that help reduce pollution to building green infrastructure like our 2 brand new net zero fire stations, the first in the United States. We also teamed with the federal government to make our new international airport, opening in 2020, LEED Gold certified. Beyond that, Salt Lake City has leveraged the help of nearby cities and our utility partner, Rocky Mountain Power, to establish a framework to allow us to become a net 100% renewable electricity community by 2030.
And for our last goal, Vicki Bennett talks about our commitment to parks and open spaces.
Salt Lake City's parks and open spaces are some of the most treasured assets in our community. With 690 acres of parkland and dozens of large, medium, and neighborhood-sized parks, these public spaces enrich our community and natural environment. In the last year, the city has made improvements at a dozen parks to make them more accessible and inclusive for all residents. And in 2018, we saw the addition of Salt Lake City's 7th community garden. Not only do community gardens help residents eat fresh, healthy food with a lower carbon footprint, they encourage people to get outside and exercise, all while preserving green space in our cities.
And now it's time for our History Minute.
Through the 1980s, the University of Utah did not have a great football team. And then in 1990, they hired Ron McBride to be their head coach. Utah was an underachieving program, he said that year. Their expectations weren't that high. When they hired me, they said, well, if you cannot embarrass us against BYU and be in about the middle of the league and be respectable, you can stay here as long as you want. The bar was low. McBride stepped in and by his second season gave the Utes their best record since 1985. A year later, he took the Utes to the 1992 Copper Bowl, which was their first bowl appearance in almost 3 decades. His 13 years as Utah's head coach were far and away the most successful of his career. With the Utes, McBride posted an overall record of 88-63. He took the Utes to 5 more bowl games. His best season came in 1994, though, when the Utes won a then record 10 games and attained the highest postseason ranking in school history. McBride had raised the bar so high for Utah that it proved to be his undoing. After losing 5 close games and a 5-6 finish in 2002, Coach Mack was let go. Today, the Utes are members of the prestigious Pac-12, a place they would not occupy had it not been for the groundwork laid by Ron McBride over his 13-year tenure as coach.
Thanks for watching this week's episode of Capital City News. Join us next time to stay up to date on all the latest. For SLCtv, I'm Poonam Kumar.